Man, what is happening, my YouTube family? Of course, it is your boy B New. I'm coming at you on this Tuesday. And first and foremost, as always, I just want to send out positive vibrations and blessings to anybody who could be listening. And if you haven't already done so, I'd appreciate it if you like, subscribe, hit that bell, set the reminders for anytime the show shall appear. And that way you can be right there on time to get the notification. Now, with all that being said, we know that LeBron James and the Lakers did not make the play-in tournament this season. And so today's show, we're going to turn our attention to the teams that did. Now, tonight's matchup is going to feature, of course, the Cavs and the Nets in the East and the Clippers in Minnesota in the West. Now, what I want to focus on this video in particular is the Eastern Conference matchup between the Nets and the Cavs. And I'm going to have a separate video focusing on the Western Conference matchup between the Clippers and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, both the Cavs and the Nets have had very surprising seasons, both finishing where most people thought that they would not at the beginning of the season. The Cavs only had 22 wins last year, and many did not expect to see them vying for a playoff spot, much less even being competitive. Now, but they doubled up that this year. They went from 22 wins to 44 wins. They doubled that up with outstanding play from their young core. The young core was so good that some even people had speculating that LeBron James would like to go join them and go play for them because of the comments that he made around at the All-Star game. But like I said, we're not going to get into all that because LeBron and the Lakers, they're not in the play-in, so we're not going to talk about that. Let's just focus on that great young core of Cleveland. Darius Garland playing great, All-Star point guard, Karis LeVert, and of course the rookie Evan Mobley has played outstanding. Even in the absence of Jarrett Allen, and the Cavs are still holding out hope that Jarrett Allen, who hasn't played since March, could be back at some point in the postseason if they can advance far enough. Now, as we all know, the Cavs are led by the Coach of the Year candidate, J.B. Bickerstaff. I am a big fan of J.B. Bickerstaff and what he's done in the association. The Cavs have used 26 different players this season, similar to the Lakers. But JB, unlike Frank the Stank Vogel, and that's what I'm going to keep referring him to as Frank the Stank, because the way he coached just stank, but we're glad that he is gone, so we won't have to mention him too much. But like I said, we're not focusing on the Lakers. Back to what I was saying, Bickerstaff was able to coach this young group to the 8th seed and only 2 games out of the 6th seed, safe from the play-in tournament. Now, why couldn't Frank do that? With LeBron James for half of the season, Anthony Davis for half of the season, and Westbrook for the whole season. You couldn't, in the West, I dare say it, is not even as strong as the East. Not anymore. Look at 1 through 8 and look what the record is, and look at the teams that's below 500 in the 10th spot in the West versus the East. But that's a story for another day. Now, we all know the Nets came into the season. It's a surprising season for them as well, because the Nets came into the season not only as the favorites to win the East, but to win the whole thing. But we already know the Nets had to deal with a very tumultuous season as well. Kyrie only played in 29 games due to his vaccination status and not getting the vaccine and what the restrictions were, of course, in New York. I was just in New York. Love the city. We'll be back soon. But anyway, KD missed 21 games after he sprained his MCL, and he's lucky he only missed that many games. But James Harden, he only played 44 games before he got traded away to Brooklyn for Ben Simmons, who is still yet to play this year. Now, Ben Simmons has been ruled out of the play-in tournament, but just like with the Cleveland Cavaliers having hope for Jarrett Allen, the Brooklyn Nets do have hope that Ben Simmons can lace them up and play if they can advance further, which I predict that they will. And of course, we're going to get into a lot more about predictions in the upcoming games here coming up. Now, as we all know, the Nets and the Cavs played each other 4 times during the regular season, and the Nets won 3 of those 4, including the most important one, I would say, was last Friday's 118-107 victory at the Barclays. And that's what really secured them, because they both had the same record of 44-38. But of course, the Nets have the tiebreaker because they beat them 3-1 in head-to-head matchups. Now, if the Cavs could get Jarrett Allen back, it would help them tremendously. To have Jarrett Allen and Mobley together, that probably won't be a likely scenario. But if they could have both of those players and somehow Jarrett Allen, when they asked Bickerstaff about it the other day, he just said that he's holding out hope, but he really didn't want to comment on it. I'm not sure what they have him listed as today. More than likely questionable, I would imagine. So I just wouldn't be banking on Jarrett Allen coming back. But if he did, I think it would be a much closer game, especially with Jared Allen matching up against Andre Drummond. That was a great pickup by the Nets midway through the season, picking up an Andre Drummond and picking up a Seth Curry. To me, I think that's what solidifies their chances, because if they didn't pick up, and people don't realize how important role players are, if they didn't solidify that front court by getting a guy like Drummond who could clean up that glass and do all the dirty work for Kevin Durant and for Kyrie to get down there and get in the paint and get putbacks and easy looks, and also just getting the rebounds and extra possessions for the Nets, I think is important. And then somebody else who can spread the floor like a Seth Curry, who's not afraid to let that three fly and shoot it at a decent clip. But the matchup that I'm looking the most forward to tonight in the Nets versus the Cleveland Cavaliers is the matchup between Darius Garland and, of course, Kyrie Irving. Two great point guards. Now, Kyrie is not as young as he used to be. It's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but we all know how phenomenal he is when it comes to handling that rock and how good he is getting to the basket, and also his shot. And maybe not so much as creating for others, although he is capable of that. But we love to see Kyrie in a one-on-one situation take defenders off the dribble. And that's going to be a very good matchup tonight to watch Darius Garland and Kyrie. The lone loss the Nets had against the Cavs this year, Kyrie did play in that game, but Kevin Durant was out. So you might say, well, do the Cavs even have a chance? Now, in the last matchup, the very important matchup that kind of decided that 7th and 8th seed and who would have a home court in the play-in, the Cavs were actually winning that game by 5 points going into the fourth quarter. But we all know that the Nets rallied and ended up winning that game by 11. So now, let's talk about the predictions. And this is just my predictions. Take it for what it is, even with a grain of salt. But FanDuel right now is currently giving Cleveland 9.5 points. And to me, that's like how Birdman went into the Breakfast Club. Put some respect on my name. Yeah, they like, man, you giving us 9.5 points. We had the same record. We have a great young core, although that is Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. We feel like we have a great young core too, and we're going to step up and do what we got to do. And if you ask me, I would take the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 9.5 tonight. I think it's going to be a close game. Now, we all know at the end of the game, there can be some fouling going on. Let's say the Nets winning by 7 and you trying to foul and force them to the line. There's 30 seconds left and you want them to miss the free throws, but they keep going to the line and making free throws and maybe can perhaps win by 10 or 11. That could be a scenario. So, hey, don't go betting the farm on Cleveland by 9.5. You understand what I'm saying? But if I had to go one way or the other, I would take Cleveland plus the 9.5. But I still think the Nets will win the game. Now, of course, the Nets are minus 450 in the straight up. And for those of you who don't understand how to bet on the straight up, that's just saying that the Nets is going to win. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, without taking the point spread into consideration. Now, the Nets are minus 450, which means you have to bet $450 just to win $100, because that's how confident they are that the Nets will win. Now, on the other side, you would bet $100 for the Cavs to win in the straight up, and you would actually win $450. Now, to me, I'm just not that brave to be putting all that money up like that, regardless of who it is. But because at the end of the day, I just feel as though the Nets are going to win the game, even if they only win the game by 2 or 3. But my prediction is the Nets win by 7. That's just my prediction. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be a good defensive struggle to start off. But in the second half, the teams are going to turn it up on the offensive end. And I predict that the Nets win by a final score of, let's just say, 116-109. For some reason, that's just calling me out. 116-109. Could score more points. I don't fool with that over-under. But like I said before, the Nets are definitely going to win this game. I don't see them losing and having to go and face the winner of the 9-10 matchup. I just don't see that happening. They want to go ahead and secure their positioning and be able to move on to the next round without having to play another game. And I think Kevin Durant is the second best player in the NBA right now. Had him first for a quite little second, but the way Giannis played at the end of the season, improved and went out against great teams, against the Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers and against Brooklyn, and just took those games over. The step back three was nasty, going to the line and finishing and just having an all-around game. I had to go ahead and give props to Giannis because he's already morphed into more than what we thought he was. People thought he was a Milwaukee Buck, just a deer, just to run up and down the court and do that. And we all know the words that James Harden had for them, but that's a story for another day. But like I said, take Cleveland plus the 9.5 tonight. take the Nets in the straight up because the Nets are going to win. And like I said, the main matchup I'm going to be taking a look at is that between Darius Garland and Kyrie Irving. I think it's going to be a very key matchup. But as always, I look forward to these 40 games and 40 nights. It's what the NBA gives us. It's the most wonderful time of the year. I'm sorry, y'all know I'm a little bit silly. It is the best time of the year, though, because I love me some NBA playoffs. And where I am right now, the weather's starting to get warm. Old man winter finally took his ass to sleep. The sun is poking out, and now it's time for some NBA playoffs. So everybody get ready. Join in, tune in every day. We're going to be talking about the playoffs. And like I said, if you haven't done so already, you know what to do. Hit that bell. And as always, this is B New, and I'm saying right on to the real, and much love to these haters. Y'all know I'm out.